Good morning, gorgeous human being, person out there doing the do, being the bee. I'm Aminata Desert Rose, plant Walker Firewoman, and today's episode is all about the spring equinox. It's coming up on March 19th. So, what I want to do in this episode is talk with you about the equinox, about the possibility that it represents as we transition from winter into spring, and share with you about our upcoming soul journey to self trust, which we are doing during the portal of the equinox. So, you want to stay with us until the very end. So let me talk with you about this equinox. So first of all, the equinox refers to the light. During the equinox, whether it's the fall or the spring equinox, we're coming into balance, a day of equal light and equal darkness. Wow. There's like only a moment when this happens. And then as we go through the equinox in the spring, we're moving into more light. And as we go through the equinox in the fall, we're moving into more darkness. But in that moment of balance, in that moment of equity, we have an opportunity to plant a seed, to nurture an idea, to carry something from the darkness into the light. That is the opportunity going through the equinox portal. I want to say a few more things about winter and spring. So, as you know, in winter, it's colder. And when it's colder and darker, we tend to stay inside more. We tend to, where it's a time when the earth herself is resting, storing energy in the roots. It's a time of slowness, even stillness, dormancy, hibernation, right? But when we come into spring, we're coming into a quickening of pace. We're coming into things being seen, sprouting above the ground where we can see them. We're coming into a time of more light, more energy, more creation that is obvious and available. So the opportunity, of course, if we're paying attention to nature, if we're aligning ourselves with her rhythms and her intelligence, then there's an opportunity for us too to spring forward, to become more visible, to quicken our pace. The challenge is to do this in a way that honors your body, that honors your energetic system, that is in keeping with your season of life. For me, what we need to do in spring, before we jump out there and pop out and propagate all over the place, we need to pay attention to the soil of our being. We need to focus on restoring trust with ourselves. In this next section, I want to talk with you about why one of the main principles of regenerating with the earth, which is just a loose framework that I am working with right now, that I am sharing with you, that I've been coming up with based on my observations of my body and my rhythms and the earth. I'm going to share with you about regenerating with the earth and how to use this time of the equinox and the transition into spring in a way so that you're set up to flower, bloom, propagate, get out there and shine, have your projects, creative babies burst through in a way that they're well supported. So that's what we're going to be going more into in this next part of our time together. Okay, so let's talk about regenerating with the earth. Regenerating with the earth is, on one level, it's simply paying attention to where is the earth in her cycles, wherever it is that you mostly live. I know a lot of us travel, but paying attention to the earth and her cycles where you are, and trusting that intelligence as something that maybe you should align with. So there's some very simple things that we already do in this kind of overculture that recognizes the earth's rhythms and that we align to. So for example, planting seeds or reaping harvests. We have learned as a human species that seeds should not be put in the ground when it is cold and covered with dirt, with snow, right? We wait until the warmer weathers come. We wait until, there's more moisture. We pay attention to when there's more light. And then we're putting seeds in the ground. We're aligning ourselves to this agricultural calendar. Okay, that makes sense, right? Well, energetically, we also want to pay attention to those rhythms because even though a lot of us are using electric lights all the time and we have running water that may it's not subject to weather patterns, we just wake up, we turn on the faucet, etc. We are still creatures of the earth, and her energy and cycles are inside of us. We are our DNA is still of this planet and of the stars. And when we regenerate with the earth, when we're paying attention to nature's cycles and her wisdom, we can give ourselves a standard, it's like something to check in with. Well, so and so said this and that, and I could do this and that, but ask yourself, is it winter? Is it time to slow down? Okay. Well, so and so said this and that, and I have an opportunity to do this and that, or they need this from me. Ask yourself, okay, so we're in spring. We're in a time of growth. Does this feel like it's in alignment with that? What I'm saying is that when we regenerate with the earth, we don't have to second guess ourselves and doubt ourselves when we say no, or when we say yes, or when we say not now. When we regenerate with the earth, we can avoid burnout. We can avoid this whole mentality that permeates the overculture where there's never enough. You could always do more. More is better. Instead, we can attune ourselves to another foundation. And that foundation and pacing tells us that there is such a thing as enough. It is important to slow down. It's important to perk up. It's important to expose ourselves to the sun. It's important to go into the darkness. All of this flowing, this coming and going and easing and transitioning, this is all part of the earth's intelligence. And when we regenerate with the earth, it gives us a way to root ourselves. That's not to root ourselves in a healthy way, rather than rooting ourselves in the overculture that so many of us are a part of. When you regenerate, you know when to slow down, when to be invisible, and when to come above ground, when to get out there, when to work a little longer, and how to do it with joy. How to do it with joy. Now I want to talk with you about what I call the 5 principles of regeneration. And these are ideas that I have come up with. They are not mine. They are not, I'm not claiming to have the gospel truth. But from my observation, I've noticed these principles of regeneration that have worked well with me and with other folks who I work with. So the first principle is release. And by the way, these are 5 R's, and that helps me to keep them straight. So I invite you, if you like, to take some notes on these 5 R's. So the first is release. And release I associate with the fall. When, leaves are falling, plants are releasing, we're releasing. So, but for me, releasing also refers to releasing colonized thinking. And there are 3 pieces of colonized thinking that I'm constantly letting go of. So the one is linearity. And instead of looking at things as going from A to B to Z, I'm adopting a cyclical way of understanding things, because again, the earth is cyclical. One of the other things that I am releasing from the overculture is either or, good or bad, duality. You're with us or you're against us. If we know anything about our personal lives or about our social movements, we know that they're both and. We know that there is no absolute purity in us or in our movements or in our families, our schools. And the search for purity, for absolutism, is in fact what has us turn on each other, turn on ourselves, and have victims become oppressors. I want to move to rest, the second principle, the second R. And rest I associate with winter. It's a predominant theme of winter. The deal is that most of us don't know how to rest. We know how to numb, we know how to distract, but resting, actually slowing down activity to allow the body, the mind, the spirit to come to a place of stillness, of no output, of simple receiving. That is a challenge in this overculture. And that principle allows us to not burn out, but it also gives us the energy ultimately that we're going to need to do the work to fulfill on our life purpose. The third principle is rooting. I also associate rooting with winter. And rooting is all about digging in, anchoring ourselves, paying attention to where we anchor ourselves. So, in regenerating with the earth, I look at rooting as rooting ourselves in our ancestral lineage, rooting ourselves as creatures, as, children of the earth, I look at rooting ourselves in our divine relationships, in our visions. But rooting is also a time of storing energy at the root level, unseen. In yoga, according to my friend Lewis Jackson, the root is also the center. The root chakra, which in women is the cervix, is also our center. So feeding that root is also an important part of regeneration. And finally, the fifth part is roaring. The fifth principle is roaring. Kind of like dandelions roar. They just get out there. They propagate. They run it hard. They're bright. You see them. They're like full bodied. They've got bitter green leaves, which are so good for you in the spring. And they've got those beautiful bright flowers, which are also tasty. And they've got that root, which is so good for your body. So rooting, so roaring I associate with summer. So those are the 5 principles. And in this next section, I want to talk with you about spring and restoring. Okay, so let's talk about spring. Yes, I love spring. It's such a hopeful time after winter for me. It's such an enjoyable moment, that transition through the equinox into spring. Oh man, it's delicious, right? Okay, so let's talk about restoring. How can you restore trust as you transition from winter into spring? How can you restore trust in yourself so that you can transition from winter into spring, into that beautiful work that you want to do, that above ground stuff that's going on, in a way that happens at a pace that is good for you, in perfect timing, because you are listening to your deepest self, your wisest self, and in a way that brings you joy as you do it. So, first of all, one of the most fundamental things you can do to restore trust is to listen to yourself. Listen and honor what you hear. So I love the internal family systems idea that you have different parts of yourself, and each part of yourself needs your attention and some honor from you. So for example, I can feel into my lower left abdomen, and I feel some scaredness there. I feel fear. And so I can then dialogue with that part of myself. I can say yes to the fear. Yes, I'm with you. And ask that part of myself, what do you need? I need to know that you love me. And saying yes to that part of me. Yes, I love you. That part of you, as you get to know, dialogue with the different parts of yourself, and give yourself what you need, what those different parts need, you will have more stability and trust, more willingness and ability to say yes and to say no with a sense of peace and confidence, as opposed to blowing in the wind, whichever way something goes, or feeling like there's no way that you can say no because who else is going to do it? No, honoring the different parts of yourselves makes you a leader and responsible for yourself, and it takes it out of constantly being externally directed into being directed by your deep wise self, who's holding all these parts of you. The other thing that's really important to do is to work with your body in a very conscious way as you transition from winter into spring. Work with your body in a very conscious way. Lewis Jackson, again, my yogi friend, says the body is a portal to freedom. And when we don't work with the body consciously, let's say we get sick, maybe very ill, chronic sickness, chronic illness, we may want a divorce from the body. But the key to our healing is reestablishing trust with the body, is getting back on the same page with the body, is finding gratitude with the body. So this transition from winter to spring is an opportunity to very consciously work with our bodies. I'm saying this, I'm talking about this spring equinox as this opportunity to consciously transition from the dark into the light with the assistance of the nature, energies, of the earth energies, of the cosmic energies. It's the perfect time to consciously make this transition in alignment with these larger forces around you. So I encourage you to do that. And finally, I want to talk with you about our spring equinox, soul journey to self-trust. This is a virtual opportunity for you over the course of a long weekend to experience what it's like to hold space for others without trying to save them, to experience saying no or not now without being racked by guilt, to work at a humane pace, to be a strong, loving presence for justice. We're practicing all these things, my friend, during this spring equinox soul journey to self-trust. I hope you'll join us.